All right. It is your first time doing DMT or one of your first times doing DMT, and you're looking for a little bit of guidance like, what should I think coming into this? What type of headspace should I be in? This is my best recommendation, and what I tell most people when they're going to do DMT for the first time or the first few times they do it. I think that until you have experienced it, and until you've experienced it to the level that you know you can and likely want to, meaning, you either enter what feels like another dimension, you are just in front of other beings that seem conscious and seem to either recommend things or guide you or explain things to you or just make you look at some wild shapes, or you feel like you're flying through the sky. These are outer space. These are kind of the things that I think most people expect coming into a DMT trip. If that is why you are here, um, I have one simple rule, and that is that your main focus should be to ingest the required amount of DMT to get you to that level of an experience. So, what I mean by that is, if you have your bong and your sandwich method and you got your DMT in there, and you're starting to light it and you're kind of getting all the green lit and it's starting to torch and you're pulling and you do your first rip and you're holding it, your immediate thought should be, all right, hold my breath as long as I can. Could I get a little bit more? Sometimes you pull another hit, you're trying not to cough, you're holding it in. Don't focus on the trip. Don't get lost between your hits, and do not prolong the time between your hits. The second you feel like you can go into your second hit, go into your second hit. Oftentimes it looks like, you're just, and you hold as long as you can. Maybe you go, and you right back at it. That's usually the pacing. It's going to be hard to ingest enough your first few times. If you're not seasoned on ripping a bong, if you're not seasoned on vaporizing, like, I don't know if you do some sort of weed concentrate, if you don't have experience there, it is going to be very difficult to do enough. Most people come back wishing they had done more, feeling like they didn't quite get there, and this is not an easy skill. It took me maybe 10 good tries until I really found a method and a way that got me to what I would even consider now to be a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 as far as like intensity. I don't really analyze trips as whether or not I quote unquote break through or not, but there are times where you feel like you relate to more what people describe as a breakthrough experience. Regardless, if you're looking for the extraordinary psychedelic experience, what is seemingly the base of the iceberg, if you are looking for that, you should really find out what you want your ceiling to be by doing enough of it. I also think that leaving your consciousness too much and too much of your ego in a trip is kind of counterproductive to the early stages of DMT. Maybe at all. Most of the time, I get in a weird headspace and others get in a weird headspace is when they don't do enough to actually let the DMT take just full control and take over. I like the idea of hitting it until you are not able to. You don't have to count your rips 3 times. You don't, all these rules you read, just do enough of it, load more than enough, rip it, hold your hits, take a hit with you into the experience, and really make sure it is full on there before you stop. Don't stop and wait. Stopping and waiting, it jacks your anxiety up. Sometimes that hesitation and nervousness will keep a trip from even coming. So, you kind of let the DMT do its job. I do not hear many people say they did too much their first time, their second time, their third time. I rarely hear people say that in general. I mean, there are headspaces you can get in that you would wish you weren't in, but generally speaking, as far as the like amount that you trip, most people come back saying, I wish I did a little more. I probably should have done another hit. I probably could have held it a little longer. That's how a lot of people view it. And because of that, you should consider that. That is my big rule. If you are an exception to that rule, I'm just going to cover this really quickly. If you're somebody that would rather find a way to do DMT by just kind of getting your toes a little wet, I would recommend rolling a spliff of some sort, like a DMT joint, and load enough that would allow you to do as much as you would want to do, but just do some smaller hits on it. You still give it a good hold. Maybe not small hits, but you're not going to rip it like you rip a bong, obviously. And, you put 50, 60 milligrams in there and spread it throughout. You don't have to smoke it all. Whatever's left in there, you can put at the base of a bong pack or a bowl pack or whatever you want to do with it. It's nice to have enough in there to where if you're feeling it and vibing it and wanting to keep going, that you can. I just think that's another thing to consider with the bong. Don't weigh out exactly 50 milligrams. Leave a margin of error with accidentally torching some, or not being able to hit all of it. It gets up the sides, or it pulls through a little. There are a lot of errors. I think the torching it with the lighter and it killing a little bit of it, or weakening it, dampening it, those are possible things to consider. So load more than enough and do as much as you can. Those are the big ones. The other thing is that you are here to experience DMT. Do not have a big ego about what music you want to listen to, and also what headspace you need to be in. Ultimately, I find that DMT is very centering. And I'm not saying that if you just broke up with your girlfriend yesterday, or even something more tragic like your kid just passed away or something, if that's something that recently happened, yeah, I guess you could do this DMT and wind up having an experience that is undesirable and related to what you've gone through. But more times than not, it is so unrelated, especially in your early stages, to where if you do see anything relating to trauma that you're currently going through, usually it feels like a very cleansing effect. I cannot say that prolonged, what would seem to be excessive uses of DMT is a safe idea. I think eventually it's going to bite back a little, or you're going to experience both good and bad. But I think early on, if you come in really wanting to experience it, really wanting to just look for what DMT is. Now that means if your eyes are open, paying attention to what is different and getting lost into the parts that are different. Obviously, as you probably know, closed eye visuals are the most DMT-like about a DMT experience, because you are isolating what is unique to DMT. When your eyes are open, it is sort of a hybrid. I'm not saying that you don't want to do that and there aren't reasons to do it. And maybe if there's a group of you around in a circle or something, maybe you kind of vibe, maybe you all kind of look at like an object you have in the center of a circle. But really, give it a moment with your eyes closed just to see what happens, and just try and focus on your breathing. If you become aware, sometimes it's nice to have just a little line in your head, like get lost or don't think about it or something like that. You just repeat that line. You just keep reminding yourself one thing as you're hitting it and focusing on hitting it. I know it sounds silly. Sometimes I tell myself, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. I know that sounds morbid, but it just reminds me to just stop. And it also reminds me to not this is an art of letting go. If you are really looking for ego loss in a DMT trip, this might be my favorite way of describing it, and something that really clicked with me one time and just totally changed my ability to let go into an experience, to the point where I do consider it practicing dying. Not that I know that it's the death experience, but that is like the way I approach it sometimes mentally. And what I mean by that is, you can tell yourself to focus and really look at the DMT and stay there. And that would be what I would say is like gas pedal meditation, gripping the steering wheel hard meditation, or letting go. But there's still something in you that is jamming the gas to the floor and holding onto the steering wheel that is, don't think about anything, focus, keep hitting it. But eventually that person that has running dialogue and is forcing yourself to not focus on other things and is forcing yourself to do that, eventually it's nice to let that slip away. That might not be something you have to worry about your first time or two. Usually the experience is so extraordinary and so mind-blowing that you don't even have the ability to remember what the hell your mantra even is or whatever. That might be a bit of an advice for a somewhat more seasoned tripper looking for new philosophy or new methods kind of coming into it. But it is good to remember that letting go of yourself completely requires you to let go of that voice inside your head, of that force that is driving the steering wheel of letting go. It's that thing that's telling yourself to focus on your breathing, to stop. Whatever it is, like if you're just like that person who's like, I'm just going to focus on my breathing, just think about breathing. That's what's got to go. You got to just not. Period. I guess I'll throw in a couple tips that if you are not too keen on your experience, some people say that a nice little like buzz or like vocal tones, like anything like that, vocalizing in any way, you're barely going to be able to sometimes, but that is a good tool, and it seems to help people deal with things they don't like. But to be honest, I think that first, second, third time users, I've read trip reports. I've read stuff that seems horrifying early on. So that might be you. I don't know. But I feel very confident when I am doing it with somebody for their first time, that they are going to be glad they did it, and they're going to come back thinking it's positive. And I always remind them, take a look at the DMT. Just take a look. Really try to look at it. And, just try to accept whatever happens in the experience. You will come back, and more than likely, you're barely going to remember it anyway. You're not going to be as scarred as being. I got to be careful speaking in absolutes here. But if you're worried about the headspaces you might be in, you got to understand that like a bad acid trip might last 12 hours. And you're very aware of your life. You're aware of your past issues. You're aware of your worries, your anxieties. It's very self-analytical. Sometimes you think you're going crazy. Whereas in like DMT, it's like, especially early on, it's so fast-paced, so rapid, it's over before you know it, and you have a strong inability to remember it the same way you can remember headspaces from other types of psychedelics. These are general things. There are exceptions to the rule, don't get me wrong. But I would say if you come in with the notion of trying to just calmly control your breathing, do some deep breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 second out, 4 second hold. That's this 4x4 style of breathing. But it can really be anything. Just kind of get control of your breath. Think about doing the DMT and just letting go, just relaxing into it and seeing it through. This is another recommendation about music. This will probably be the last thing to touch on because I think this is the most, and I'll answer questions in the comments. So I know there are a lot of people who have questions, and I'll gladly give you a detailed answer if you leave a question in the comments. But music is a good gateway, and I did mention the music before and the music selection. I think a good thing to consider is if you put on music that you're at least familiar enough with, take a note of how long the songs are and kind of plan that if you have two normal-ish length songs, that you are going to do the DMT and whatever your goal is while you're doing it. So like if you don't want to close your eyes for whatever reason and you just want to stare at an object, you want to be in the dark, or you're outside and you just want to take a look at the wilderness or whatever you have, I do think that you should come in with the intent of not reflecting on the experience, not trying to explain it, and not leaving it until you've made it through 2 songs. Allow yourself to see the full experience through. And at the worst, you're just listening to a couple songs. As far as like if it's not that much of an experience, so what? Hang in there. You can listen to these 2 songs. You like these songs. You like listening to music. So just listen to these 2 songs and then say, well, nothing really happened. We got to try again. Or I didn't really get anything. I guess I saw a little bit of swirls. Be patient. See it through. Give it enough time. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Similarly, I just want to remind people, I know this is a little scrambled as far as the order here, or there's not a lot of structure to this video. I do think the easiest come up in DMT is to do enough to where you're doing it through the come up and you are just plopped there. Eventually you are going to be hitting it, and one hit is going to feel different. The room has changed. The air has sucked out of the room. It's a whole nother ball game. You're in a whole nother atmosphere. There's like a time stops and you either hear something in your head, or like the music, it's like something happens to it and it's not like skipping, but you hear like a few distinct like or something. And that is like you're plopped in and you're already there. Now, waiting for a trip to come, which I said before causes anxiety, is maddening in the early stages because you're just like sitting there. It's like being at a roller coaster and you're waiting for them to hit the go button and you know that you're just going to boom, or like the drop style roller coasters, and you're just waiting anxiously. That is a very uncomfortable place to be in. If you're not experiencing it yet, keep going. Don't worry if you've already done 3 hits. Don't worry. Just keep trying until you've really given it a hell of an effort. Like sometimes you're just coughing too much. You can't take another. You've done a ton and it hasn't had an effect. So at that point, give it at least 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then come back in. Which I also touched on this. I guess I better clear this up too. I know I mentioned trying to be right back on it and the pacing in which you approach hitting it. Like the tempo, like the second I exhale, I got to prepare for my next hit and I got to get this next hit in until I'm done. And the last hit you take with you into the experience. So usually on your last hit, it's like, you breathe out your one, you're like, and then you just, you're tripping. You're still holding the hit. That's how you do it right. That's good. So, leave any questions below. I'm going to try and do some regular videos, different topics. And yeah, thank you for viewing. Safe travels. Godspeed.